The pharmacy is now open.
What is up, you guys? Welcome to another episode of VGRx, your weekly dose of video game news and know-how and everything. First off, you may notice two things. One, we sound crisp and clean.
Oh, yeah.
And that is because we are actually in a studio right now, and I'm going to throw the name of those guys out. NWCZ Radio has been very, very gracious to allow us to use their studio.
Yep.
And now we're not recording in my bedroom on a computer microphone. So, yes. So, thank you guys so much.
Moment of silence for the bedroom recording
yeah,
studio.
Exactly.
Hey, in a pinch, we may be back there someday. Who knows?
I'm sure at some point we will, but no blankets on the ceilings, that's for sure. And second, I would like to issue an apology. Last week, I said that all turn-based strategy games are garbage, and they all are based on RNG, and I apologize for that.
Turn-based role-playing games.
Yeah, thank
is what you were referring to.
I was referring to like the damage output and things like that, not to like aggro, because I know that stuff you can control that has nothing to do with RNG.
This is very big of you.
Yes,
I'm so proud of you, Scotty.
Yes, I've calmed down. I've started to tone it down.
We can have a podcast dedicated to talking about this someday.
Okay,
just so that you can speak your full message.
I thought you were going to say.
What you're saying now.
I thought you were going to say we can have an entire episode of me just apologizing for things that I've done.
We'll need that
we could
someday.
do that
no doubt.
too.
I'm sure we could fill that with an hour.
Episode 347.
Yeah, it's very specific. I like it. We'll remember that down the line. Okay, so this week we actually are doing something special. So instead of doing our normal news show, where we just talk about things that are in the news, we decided that we kind of wanted to give you guys kind of our stories, how we got into video games, how we started just doing what we do, because we can't just blurt out that we know things and not give it some context. So
why we're here.
Yeah, why we're here, exactly. So that's kind of what we're here to do today, to give you guys a little bit about us. So I guess we can go around the room here. Of course, you already know I'm Scott, and then you know Zach, of course.
Yep, hello.
And then Dan on the couch.
Yo.
And then, of course, Brittin.
What's
our
up?
fairy squad mother. Hit him with the dab.
Thank you.
Okay, hit him with the dab. Perfect. And I don't know. Let's take it away. Who wants to start here?
Do we want to start with how we formed the podcast, or
let's finish with that.
Yeah, let's finish with that. Yeah,
it chronologically, I think that'll fit. I'm still organizing my thoughts.
Sure, Brittin.
Yeah, sure.
I know you've been thinking about it for a hot second.
It's true.
Okay,
it's true. I can kick it off.
Yeah.
Also,
start
he
off.
starts the earliest too.
Yeah.
Again, chronologically,
Yeah,
it
exactly.
sort of just makes the most sense.
That's true. Okay, go for it.
I'm the old guy here. You guys know that.
That's true.
I was born in 1983. Yeah.
Dang. Old guy.
So it's not too surprising, probably. My first exposure to games was Atari 2600. My very first gaming memories were going to my grandma's house. She lived about half an hour away from us. We'd drive over there every weekend. And my favorite part of going, of course, was seeing my grandma. Second favorite part of going was she had this cart in the back room. She'd roll it out, it had an Atari on it, a whole bunch of games, the controllers, and we'd plug it into her living room TV. And I have two older siblings, a brother and a sister. We'd all play Atari games together. We played Frogger, we played Pac-Man, we played Pitfall. She had an awesome Spider-Man game. There was this game called Tank, which was this multiplayer shooting game. It was I think you could play 4 players on it, actually. It was fantastic. But my grandma was actually amazing at Pac-Man. She schooled all of us. She schooled all the kids. She schooled my parents.
I think that's a grandma thing, though.
It must be.
My grandma was really good at Tetris, so.
Okay.
But it has something to do with
my
those
mom's
games.
good at Tetris, and
Is
she's
she?
a grandma now, so
Hey,
it all
there you
adds
go.
up.
Yeah. It all comes full circle.
It's true.
I don't think either of my grandmas plays Tetris, actually.
Oh.
My grandma barely knows how to work her phone.
Do you want to go out and buy a GBA and give it to your grandma?
I don't think she'd like that very much.
Okay, well, it was just a thought. Continue.
Did you guys play any Atari back in the day?
What's an Atari?
I guess there's one in the room.
Okay.
I guess I should wait till you guys
No, you're fine.
Get to your stories.
You're good.
I mean, I can
You'll start there.
I
Who
can
knows?
say confidently, I have never even touched an Atari.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the one with the little, like, the spiral reel and stuff where you play
Pong.
There was one of those. Yeah, you'd play like Breakout and Pong
Got
with that
it.
thing.
Okay.
What was, I guess, remarkable about it is these games were so incredibly basic and simple, but we would sit there and play them for hours.
Of course.
Somehow we would just milk the fun out of them. And games like Pac-Man, there was the high score to consider, so you could always just pass the controller around and
The
see who
leaderboard.
Yeah.
The leaderboard back in the day.
Right. I mean, if MLG was a thing if esports were a thing back then, my grandma could have torn up the charts, no
Dang.
doubt.
That's intense.
Yep. So I know you guys kind of probably expect me to, from this point out, just to say Nintendo.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some of that, but you might be surprised. It's a pretty diverse set of consoles that pulled me through my gaming life.
That's exciting.
The next thing is Nintendo.
I'm going to start off by saying there's not going to be that much Nintendo, but we're going to start off with Nintendo.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, that's kind of how some of our podcast episodes have gone,
Oh
too.
my gosh, I know.
No
It's
doubt.
bad.
Tell me about it.
Nintendo's
Yeah.
in the news these days. What
Yeah.
do you expect? So my family got an NES, of course, like many families did. Probably when I was like, I don't know, 6, 7, something like that. My brother was the one begging for it. He's 6 years older than me. So he actually had a paper out at the time. He paid for it himself, so it was his console. So not only was the whole big brothers in charge thing going on, but it was his system. So I didn't get to play it a ton, but when I did, games like Mario, Zelda, Metroid, of course, like the big Nintendo franchises that are still around, those are the ones that really clicked with me back then and made me really start to fall in love with the idea of playing video games. And that's kind of what kept me moving forward in gaming. Zelda 2, of course, there's a story behind that. I won't get into it now, but there's a story between me and my brother,
If you
NES,
wanna-
Zelda 2.
If you want to tell it, go for it.
Well, I have a lot of other stuff to talk
Okay,
about,
okay.
so I don't want to
You don't wanna
eat into
dwell.
your guys' time either.
No, you're fine.
So yeah, we played a lot of NES back then. My brother had a bunch of friends in the neighborhood that also had Nintendos, and we would roll around from house to house. He would borrow games from them. They would borrow our games. So we got to play a lot of games, despite not having a ton of money to buy games. And we would also go up to the corner video store. Do you guys know what that is?
Yes, I do.
It was called Backstage Video.
I
It
was
was
gonna say.
walking distance, so we would walk up there sometimes, and we would rent games too. It was like $6 to rent a game for 2 days, maybe.
Oh, what if-
it was
what are
outrageous,
the
and that
late
was
fees?
1980s prices too.
What are the late fees like, you think?
We didn't dare
I
incur a
know.
late fee. It would have
Oh,
been,
man.
it would have been horrible.
It would have been the end of days.
Yep. So from the early NES days, I kind of segged into completely different territory. My dad brought home a PC shortly after this, kind of around that same time.
PC Master
and
Race, wow.
back then, we didn't even have Windows on this machine. It was very early. Windows was out. I think Windows came out like in the mid '80s, but the first couple versions we didn't have. So this was a DOS based machine, and we used it had floppy disk drives, of course. Not just the 3.5-inch floppy disk, the hard one, but we had the 5.25-inch floppy disk on this thing too. And
This is going over a lot of people's heads
most
right now.
it was a literal floppy disk.
Oh,
it
was
was like
it?
bendable. Yeah.
I know the like square ones, but
And I feel like, it was before that. And I
Okay.
feel like
Wow.
these held probably like kilobytes of data. They were absolutely minuscule.
that was a big deal.
But
though.
the first, it was.
That's a big deal.
The first games I remember playing on PC were 5.25-inch floppy disk games. So some games specifically from that era, I remember SimCity was one. We're all familiar with that. But like the very first SimCity, I was playing around this time. And then there was this game, I don't know why I remember it. It's not a memorable game at all, but it was called Avoid the Noid. You guys know who the Noid is?
It sounds very familiar.
It does sound very familiar. It
So
might
the
just be a
Noid
meme
was
that I heard.
essentially like the mascot for Domino's Pizza throughout the 80s.
Oh, okay.
And he was this like claymation Gumby California Raisins superhero in spandex bunny man.
It's like Pepsi Man.
It made no sense at all. He didn't look like a guy that should be advertising pizza,
No, of
but
course not.
he was obsessed with Domino's Pizza, and his only goal in life was to get Domino's Pizza. So the point of the game is you're a delivery boy. You're showing up to an apartment building, and you're going up through the floors of the apartment building, trying to avoid the Noid, who's trying to steal the pizza that you're supposed to deliver to your customers. Very basic, very simple, and it was a dumb game. I actually looked it up on YouTube earlier today so I could reminisce a little, get ready for this, and it looked just as bad as I remembered it. But I guess what stands out about the game, the reason I remember it's the first video game I ever bought with my own money. So I was very proud of this game. My brother was playing way cooler games like SimCity, but I had bought this with my own money, so I treasured it. I don't know where it is today, unfortunately. R.I.P. Avoid the Noid. But
It is in the Noid.
yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, it has disappeared. I love those like mascot games though, like where companies will produce
Sure.
like that, and then
Cool Spot.
Yeah, Cool Spot, Pepsi Man.
Yep.
And then I don't know if you the Burger King games on the 360.
I had a copy of I think Cool Spot, except that it was a copy that my friend gave to me.
Okay, I
and
love that.
He didn't have the right name for it, so he called it Spot the Cool Adventure. I think.
That's adorable.
You just never gave it back.
I never actually played it. I don't know
Okay.
if I have it. He
Got
might
it.
still have it, but I remember playing the game, and it was
Well, we'll edit that part out just in case they're listening and come find you, just in case.
Yeah.
Continue.
All right. So from here, it was like the early 90s. We kind of became a Sega household.
Wow.
And I would say I couldn't really tell you why, but I know why. The marketing for Sega in the early 90s, right when it was becoming big in the United States and positioning itself to take on Nintendo, was this edgy, a little bit more grown up. It kind of targeted, I guess, teenagers instead of like kids, like Nintendo was, kids and families like Nintendo was after. And that totally worked on my brother and I. We were so interested in Sonic and stuff like that. So
it's Mario, am I right?
So we begged for a Sega Genesis.
Oh, nice.
And played a ton of it. In hindsight, I know those games weren't that good. I know Sonic the Hedgehog's not a great game and doesn't hold a candle to any Mario games.
Who even
Whoa!
are you? Get out of
Are
here.
you a Sonic fan? Did I touch a nerve?
I'm
sorry.
not a mega Sonic fan, but like the original Sonic games were good.
Yeah.
And then it ended at Battle 2, and that was like 10 years ago.
I'm putting it into perspective here though. Compared to Mario,
No, you're right.
they don't hold a candle.
You're absolutely
different
correct.
feel, different thing they were going for entirely, but just we loved them because largely because of the marketing at the time.
That's fair enough.
We also played like Golden Axe, Streets of Rage, and we got a kick out of those games. They were fun, but again, the stuff happening on Nintendo was way better in hindsight. And then eventually we talked our parents into getting us a Sega CD, which was like one of the first CD-based home consoles. And what that brought was full voice acting for the first time to a lot of console games, which wasn't really a thing up to that point. Way better music. So the soundtracks for the games we played on Sega CD were way more interesting than the stuff you were seeing elsewhere. And then FMV, full motion video. A lot of the games were basically pre-recorded videos with very, very simple interactions on the player's part. Like Sewer Shark is an example.
What was that one game that was
Night Trap is probably what you're thinking
yeah,
of.
Yep.
Yeah. And they weren't very interesting games, but they were just so novel at the time because it was like you were watching a movie and you were interacting with it.
Yeah. It
So-
was the new thing.
It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
In hindsight.
In hindsight.
And then I guess what I really love about the Sega CD and the reason I still think about it all the time, some of my first exposure to RPGs and strategy games were on the Sega CD. And to this day, some of my favorite RPGs and strategy games are on the Sega CD. I'll name drop two specifically. Lunar, the Silver Star story was like the first RPG I really, really got into. Very Japanese style RPG, turn-based and very anime inspired, which I wasn't watching anime yet at this time. It wasn't even really around in the States in a big way, but it really clicked with me, and I love that game. I just devoured it. And then, Dark Wizard is still one of the best strategy games ever. I guess Dan would probably correct me and say tactics game because it was like a hex-based, turn-based.
Yeah, we could get into a discussion about tactics games versus strategy, but yeah, we've done that before, and there's some overlap, but strategy isn't an incorrect way. It's just I think tactics is a more correct way to refer to the genre.
I'm fine with that. So yeah, it was a fantastic game. I would love to have a way to play some of these games today. Lunar has actually been ported a couple times, like to PS1 to other systems. Dark Wizard dropped off the face of the earth. I could watch videos on YouTube and remember the good times, but I don't know if I'll ever have a way to play that game again unless I hook up a Sega CD, which is kind of unfortunate.
Is it though?
Yeah, it was really good. I'm telling you.
You're like, I don't know. It was kind of Sega.
It was kind of in the vein of like Fire Emblem.
Okay.
Which I hadn't played up until that point. I didn't play Fire Emblem until recently, so I kind of missed that along the years. But
Fire Emblem didn't even like come out in America for a long, long time.
Sure, yeah, it was a Japanese franchise. It was around since the NES, but it didn't make its way to the States until much, much later.
Nope.
Yeah.
I remember having some Game Boy Fire Emblem game. I didn't play it much, but
was it Game Boy or Game Boy Advance?
I know which one you're talking about.
I want to say it was Game Boy Color.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. I have lost the cart since then, so I don't actually know which one I had.
Gotcha. So SNES was clearly around during this time too.
Of course.
And being the big Nintendo guy I am, you'd probably expect me to be talking about that right now, but we were a Sega house. Despite that though, I had a lot of friends that had Super Nintendos. So I did have a lot of exposure to it, despite the fact that we didn't own one. My best friend had one. I'd play Street Fighter 2 with him all the time. My favorite Super Nintendo memories, though, are with my neighbor across the street. He got A Link to the Past one. I think it was probably 1992. He got it one summer. And I would go over there every single day throughout that summer, and we played together.
Nice.
We plowed through that game together. And back then, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have a strategy guide for it. So when you got stuck, you just had to muscle your way through it. There was no I don't know what to do. What am I going to do?
I guess I'll just stop playing.
We didn't have other games to play. So it was muscle our way through the hard times or just not play video games at all. Obviously, we were just going to beat our heads against it until we figured it out. But that's like the best Super Nintendo memory I've got. It was fantastic. Eventually, we did buy one. We talked our parents into that too. My brother may have bought it actually. Now that I think about it, because he had money from his paper route. And the catalyst, the reason we wanted to buy one so bad was Donkey Kong Country.
Oh, okay.
It came out, I don't know, a little later in the lifespan of that system, but the graphics were unlike anything we had seen up until that point.
Nice 16-bit.
They used rotoscope. Do you guys know what that is?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
They would take a clay model or something of a three-dimensional figure, and then they would look at it from multiple angles and map out each angle in a 16-bit sprite. And then that 16-bit sprite would essentially be animated to look like it was 3D, even though it wasn't actually 3D. It was really cool technology at the time, and it totally worked on us. It looked like a claymation game almost.
Yeah.
So it was fantastic. From there, I played some more PC games. A lot of Blizzard stuff. Okay. Blizzard is kind of what kept me interested in PC throughout probably the 90s and all the way into my adult life. It started with Warcraft, Orcs and Humans. A buddy of mine convinced me to pick up that game because he was like, you'll never believe this. We can actually play this game together, each at our own separate houses. And the way we did it, we had to use dial-up. So he had the luxury of having 2 phone lines at his house. I did not. So I had to make sure everybody was free and clear of the phones for a while. And you would, in the game, you would punch in the phone number that you were trying to dial up, and you would establish a connection. You could play a versus match in Warcraft together.
Awesome.
And it was a harrowing experience at the time because you would have to be on constant pins and needles over whether somebody was going to pick up the receiver to make a call, whether somebody was going to call your house. Anything that happened along those lines would destroy your connection. The game would be over. And these matches went on for a good amount of time, sometimes up to half an hour. So you could get to the very end, the most tense moments of the match, and it could just all fall apart. Yeah,
I grew up in a place that was pretty far behind in terms of internet infrastructure. So I had dial-up growing up too, but
you had a second line, right? Most of that time?
Eventually, most of it not.
Oh, really? Okay.
But I think that they had fixed some of the technology or set it up so that I never had to worry about people calling, except in the sense that you'd miss a call. If you picked up the receiver, it wouldn't drop the internet. It would just make a whole lot of weird sound in the phone. And I never had to type in someone's phone number to connect to them. IP address I had to do in some of those early games, never a phone number.
So it sounds like that evolved a little, even dial-up evolved a little bit over the years, because we moved on to cable internet as soon as that became available, which was probably before the time you're talking.
So did we, but that didn't happen until I was in college.
A little more rural out there. Gotcha. So yeah, of course, Diablo as well. Eventually, StarCraft. I love Blizzard, and I still do, despite the fact that they're not really making the games that I originally loved them for back then. That's okay. The first console I ever bought with my own money from a paper route, which I inherited from my brother, was the N64.
Heck yeah.
And that's really where my unbridled passion for Nintendo kicked off, that lives strong to this day. Mario specifically. Mario was a launch title. There was only 2 games you could buy for that system day one.
Mario 64 and
Pilot Wings.
Oh, that's what it was.
Those are the only games that came out with, and I think they were the only games for a good couple months at least. But it was Mario 64, so that was kind of okay because that game was just so massive. And the size was just staggering for the time. We had never seen anything like that. Wide open spaces, a huge hub world that then branched off into all these other smaller kingdoms. And there was so much to do in every single one of these kingdoms.
And bonus stuff, too.
Absolutely.
Bonus worlds.
Yeah, there was that game. You could play it for 100 hours and not run out of things to do. And again, we didn't have a strategy guide. I guess we're getting toward the era where things could have maybe been on the internet, but probably not quite yet. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was just a matter of exploring and finding your way through this stuff. And then Zelda, of course, Ocarina of Time is still one of the best games I've ever played. And yeah, it ushered a series that I already really loved into 3D for the first time, and it did it flawlessly. Nintendo are masters of that. They'll take an established concept, idea, even franchise that exists, and turn it into something completely new, something completely different based on whatever's happening in the industry around them. And 3D is probably the biggest advent I can point to of that. And they did it like no one else did. You had other companies, other franchises that were making the move into 3D at the time, but none of them were as elegant, as graceful as Mario and Zelda were. So that's where Nintendo really became my first.
Hit you hard.
There you go. Yeah. So yeah, from there, I don't know how far along we want to get in terms of like the progression.
It's totally up to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
You go as far as you want.
Yeah. We can. I honestly don't mind going a little bit over. Whatever.
Because this is like what got us, for me anyway. The way I looked at this, the way I wanted to approach this, is what made me fall in love with video games and what kept me on that trajectory to get us here where we are now.
Yeah.
Got a PS1, of course. Mm-hmm. PS2.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about modern consoles because we do enough of that on the show.
No, yeah, that's fair enough.
So yeah, that's kind of like the early half of my history with video games.
You're kind of like Pinnacle, where it all just started forming together almost.
Yeah. I guess from this point on, I kind of owned most of the systems that came out. Mm-hmm. This is when I had access to money like I didn't when I was a kid, so I could buy most of the systems, most of the games that I wanted to. And Nintendo really just, from this point on, became the constant, I guess, going forward. Mm-hmm. I played a lot of PC games, like I talked about early on and throughout the 90s, but I guess I sort of fell off of that in more recent years. I still have a gaming PC. I still have a huge Steam library with tons of games that I have and haven't touched.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But I'm always reaching for a Nintendo controller when I want to play something, when I want to have fun. And it's carried over into my fatherhood, my adult life as a husband and father. I get to play these games and share these games with my kids. Yeah. And they're always family friendly, they're always kid friendly, but I still love playing them too.
Hopefully your kids will just carry that on too.
I love it.
They'll just continue to play like Nintendo games and stuff.
Labo.
Yeah. Oh, please.
We don't have to bring that up again.
Let's not talk about it. I mean, whoever wants to go next.
To share.
Yeah.
I want to hear about you guys.
Zach?
You want me to go?
Yeah, go for it, man.
So my gaming life started out a little bit backwards and a little bit awkward. I started with actually the PS1.
Okay.
And my very first game I remember playing was Twisted Metal.
Awesome.
And I remember driving that clown truck and then turning into a robot and just utterly freaking out.
Wait, can we have a little chronological perspective? How old were you when that game came out?
Dude, I couldn't even tell you. I guess remember
he doesn't know how old he is.
Let's do the math. Twisted Metal would have been probably 96-ish or something like that. 97.
4?
Okay, but so you. Wow, you guys! Wow,
dang,
I was 4.
Okay,
so I was 4 playing Twisted Metal as my first memory, and I was utterly devastated when my mom ended up selling it because she said I didn't play it enough, and it broke my little heart.
It broke my little heart.
So sad.
So from that point on, I remember 6 years being consoleless. I didn't have any games, anything like that. And then around 10, I got the SNES because we couldn't really afford anything else. And
so what year was that? This is fascinating.
2000, I want to say.
All right.
2000, 2001.
All right.
Got the SNES. I remember playing, obviously, like Mario games. I really loved Contra.
Yes.
Back then. And then just playing like a bunch of random stuff that we'd pick up. I don't remember the stores that we would get the games from. But by that point, the SNES was pretty old.
Did you guys ever shop at Toys R Us back then?
No.
They had this cool system for buying games at Toys R Us where instead of having the games on display on the floor, they had these little pockets with slips of paper in them, and then above them were pictures of the games. Mm-hmm. You would take the slip of paper from under the picture, bring it up to the register, and pay for it there. And then on the other side of the register, right by the exit door, there was this magical window where you would bring your slip and your receipt, and somebody would be up behind a desk back there, and they just had a room full of video games back there. And they would bring out the game that you had bought, and you'd walk out the door with it. And I wanted so badly to go in that room one day.
That's mind-blowing.
It seemed like just the most magical place.
It's mind-blowing.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I was playing the SNES, and that's where I kind of got my Mario experience. And unlike you, I didn't get hooked on Nintendo. I love Contra to this day. But it took me a few years to get onto the PS2 after it came out. I think it was like 2 years after it came out. I finally got it. Convinced my mom to get it for me. And then I was able to convince her, I don't know how I did it, to buy me GTA. I think it was GTA 3 and then GTA Vice City. And I was utterly hooked. I shouldn't. Those games are a little rough around the edges. As a kid, you playing these violent video games.
I mean, you were far from the only one. But
I bet you thought that your mom was pretty cool for letting you do that.
Oh, I didn't care. That was my escape. So, I mean, kind of like the basis of my video games, it wasn't the storytelling. It wasn't the the mechanics or how the game played. It was, if it was interesting and I liked it, it was my escape. So instead of dealing with school or being stressed out about things or dealing with like life stuff as a kid, that'd be my escape, is video games. So I got the PS2. I was playing GTA. I remember playing Sly Cooper. I think it was on PS2, right?
Yeah, PlayStation 2.
Sly Cooper. And,
one of my favorite games.
Twisted Metal Black was on
PlayStation 2.
I feel like that was a launch title for PS2.
That was on.
It was early.
I loved that as well. But from the PS2, I remember moving on to the original Xbox, and I actually did not own that. My stepbrother did. And so when my stepbrother had that, I'd obviously watch him play, and his friends would come over and play, and I obviously was not able to get on it. But eventually, I saw him starting to play Halo 1.
Oh,
and I
Halo!
Was absolutely fascinated with that.
Then everything changed.
Everything changed. Played the story over and over again, and then Halo 1, there wasn't any online play. And so I spent a lot of time convincing him to play with me. And then we would play over LAN. We'd play together. And then we moved to Halo 2. A lot of online play there. Conquer. Halo 3.
You bring up Conquer bad for
I absolutely love Conquer.
It's classic rare.
Conquer is a staple
in
my gaming history. But yeah, from there just forward onto modern consoles. Got a 360 and that crashed and burned.
What happened? Red Ring of Death?
Red Ring of Death.
Did you put a towel around it?
Oh, the heating trick?
Yeah, did you do the towel
I totally
thing?
did. So what's the one thing I like to point out, I got my Xbox 360 August 1st of 2007. It fried August 1st of 2008. And from that point on, I never went back to Microsoft ever again.
Sadly, that was a very common story.
That's a good choice.
Horrible hardware issues back then.
I say it like I've never played.
Microsoft, I hope you're listening. I'm never
no more Halo.
I'm
ever
never
since
buying your
then?
product. No more Halo. I played Halos at a friend's house. I played Halo 4.
He could play Halo 5.
Understand though, that wasn't isolated instance. The Red Ring of Death. They've
I
gotten
knew
their
it was
hardware issues
popular.
sorted out.
I knew it was
that.
popular, but from that point on, I was like, you lost my
fair.
money,
Just
my faith.
It's like think of another console that had a more obscure problem in the history of consoles that have been made. There hasn't been one that would just die randomly.
And it almost wasn't random though. It happened. It was very widespread. It happened all the time, and it was a specific problem. It was something like the epoxy holding the CPU to the board was melting, and it was coming loose.
That is, I think that's crazy, and they never fixed it.
No,
they never fixed it.
Yeah, and it was exactly a year later, so that was outside the 1 year manufacturer warranty for the console. So I was like,
conveniently
out of luck completely.
RIP. And then you moved to Sony,
right? I don't remember when I got the PS3. But I got the PS3, and then obviously I'm on to the PS4 now. But back when we had the original Xbox, my first kind of introduction to PC gaming was sneaking into my brother's bedroom and getting on StarCraft.
Nice.
Yeah. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. No clue whatsoever how anything worked, but he would come back and kick me off.
Did that stick? Do you still like strategy games?
I do. I loved RTS games. I loved...
Sorry, Dan.
This is just about exactly the same thing that happened for me, actually. It was, I think it was Warcraft 2, but yeah, first exposure to PC gaming.
StarCraft.
I'll get into it when it's my turn. But
I would sneak in and he'd kick me out, but early into the 2000s, the Xbox 360. There's a lot of RTS games, Lord of the Rings, Tom Clancy's End War, I think. But a lot of console RTS games, not a lot of PC games.
Okay.
I was never a PC guy, but from there on, I guess onto the PS3 and PS4.
I like how your story almost picked up right where mine left off.
Right. That's why I laughed. You were like,
really
I bought
well.
the PS1.
Yeah.
But then modern consoles, we won't talk about that. I was like, well, that's where my story starts.
Perfect. It's almost like we planned it.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it.
Dan, you still are you? Is that about where you wanted to end? Zach?
Yeah, and
Do you have any more you want to say?
I mean, my gaming thing. You guys are very embedded into the cultures and the stories, and you have a lot of history with different games and different franchises and editions of games. I don't. Mine's the nostalgia and the escape factor for me.
But
like
you need
that I enjoy.
The nostalgia is what makes video games, what makes us come back.
Oh, can I also talk about something?
Yeah, go for it.
Given how much time Brittin took, you have plenty of time to
So-
film.
Yeah.
Don't feel bad about wanting.
Yeah,
more
he took
time.
took like 45 minutes, honestly.
Oh man, Ace Combat
Ooh.
was absolutely Ace Combat 7. Or that's not the new one.
What
is it?
console were you talking
It
about?
was on the PS2.
Okay.
It was Ace Combat on the PS2, and I played that campaign I think like 20 times.
Wow.
Don't you love those games? that
Beat
you
it
just-
on every difficulty. I
play it
remember.
over and
Have
over.
you guys ever played it?
Mm-mm.
So the very final mission is completely out of this world, but there's this giant aircraft about the size of like 3 aircraft carriers. And you have to fly into it and like blow it up like it's a spaceship. But
Like Death Star style
Yep,
into it.
into it. You were
Classic.
literally inside it. But I remember mastering that thing day
That's
and
awesome.
night.
That was Star Fox for some of us. There's not a lot of like ship on ship dogfighting type games out there, really.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Those were some of the best ones.
Although
though.
they're still making Ace Combat, aren't they?
Yeah, there's a new one coming out this year.
Okay.
And I'm very excited for it.
Are you gonna get it,
Nostalgia factor. Yep.
dude?
Definitely.
Let me know.
Yeah.
I haven't played one of those in forever. Can
Hey,
I come over and play it?
Zach, did you ever play with one of the giant like flight stick
Oh,
setups
yeah.
where you have controls just wrapped around
I
you,
wish.
pedals,
I
sticks,
totally wish
throttle.
I could.
Yeah.
I wish I could.
I bet you'd love it. That sounds awesome, but you can't. It's hard to invest in something like that for one game.
Right. So
What are you talking about? You can absolutely invest in
can,
it.
you can. It'd be
not
pricey.
if you're poor.
Okay.
But
Well,
yeah, that's about it. Nostalgia, Ace Combat, love it.
cool.
Yeah.
Dan?
You ready?
Yeah,
ready?
I think I have. I think I've got it organized well enough.
He's got a long list of
My,
things.
my
I'm
mic
excited.
working
Yeah,
out okay?
No, yeah, you're fine.
Okay,
Go
cool.
for it.
Are you guys
Cool.
ready?
No, we've had you muted the entire time.
Get
No one
comfortable.
can hear anything.
Settle in.
All right. My story is going to be more along the lines of Brittin's length, I think. So early on, it's funny you mentioned that you had kind of a Sega Genesis household.
Yeah.
Some of my earliest gaming memories, and I don't remember if they are the earliest, but some of my earliest memories are a Sega Genesis at my grandma's house. My uncle had bought it for himself, I think, and then upgraded pretty quickly after that, and just gave her the system, and it was hooked up in a TV that she never used, in a room that she never used, and I remember playing Sonic the Hedgehog. I think it must have been whatever the classic Sonic game is, because I remember the Green Hill Zone. and,
Yeah. I mean,
you know, all
one,
of
2, and
that.
3 were all on that system.
Yeah.
And they all had Green Hill
Did
zones.
they?
It could have
Okay.
been any of them.
Yeah, it could have been. So yeah, that was definitely something I remember looking forward to a lot, because my grandma lived about 2 hours away by car. So when we had holidays and things, we'd go to grandma's house because that's where everyone went to. And being, significantly younger than most of the people there, I'd just go and I'd find the Sega and I'd turn it on. And I remember I played that. There was a Disney, a super old Disney, it was like a puzzle game platformer or something. I wish I could remember the name of it, but
I should know.
yeah, I remember playing that. There was the Mario Andretti Racing, which in retrospect was awful, but I actually figured out how to get into that too, because they had upgrading the cars, and I figured out that even though you had to upgrade your tires every single time freshly, it was probably still worth it because you'd make more money and stuff. I just remember that was my first kind of approach to digging into games, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
When you don't have a lot to play, you do that, right?
yeah. So anyway, that later on, my parents ended up getting me a Game Boy Color, and I remember we had one of the classic Mario games for it, I don't know if it was a Game Boy Mario or Game Boy Color Mario. I think it was the one that was bundled with the system.
There was a remake of the very first Super Mario Brothers on Game Boy Color. If it was before that, it was probably Super Mario Land.
I bet it was the remake.
Okay.
Or maybe. I don't remember. It was fun. I remember I played that. My dad played it some. It was kind of a fun thing to do. And then I got Pokemon.
And then what happened?
Oh, no.
Pokemon was, that would have been like 4th grade for me, I think. And that was the first game that I not that I snuck it into my room, but I waited until my parents were going to bed. And then I got my flashlight out and I would play Pokemon on my Game Boy in bed. And they were at the opposite end of the house upstairs, and our house had a lot of creaking noises. So if they were getting up, it was really easy I had 30 seconds to or maybe less than that, but I had time to put it down and pretend that I was asleep. So if they were to check on me, which they never did, but I was always worried about it, that I'd get in trouble for playing Pokemon in the middle of the night.
Covert Pokemon ops.
Yeah. You know what was funny? They probably knew the whole time.
I'm sure that they did.
There are worse things you could have been doing, Dan.
Yeah. Yeah, and I picked Charizard first, or I picked Charmander first. So
yes.
Yeah,
good
I think I prefer Bulbasaur now.
Oh, get out of
for
this
other
room.
reasons.
I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah,
get out of here.
I mean, Charmander holds a special place in my heart. So that definitely was a big part of kind of my early gaming. Then I guess the other sort of formative memory that all of these things kind of blend together, and I don't know what happened first, was watching other people play computer games. And eventually playing them myself. So, I remember we had our cousins from Arkansas visiting, and they brought a laptop, and they had Age of Empires on it.
Good game.
Yeah,
Yes,
I didn't play much of it, but I played a little bit, and I was like, this is really fun. This is super cool. There was also, I remember going over to another friend's house and playing Warcraft 2 at his house, and that was a lot of fun. I never played the original Warcraft, but Warcraft 2 was there. I remember this super old game. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Lords of the Realm.
Absolutely.
I've heard of it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Of course, Brittin has.
Yeah. A friend of mine had that one, and that one was a different approach than either of the other two, but it was still, I liked it a lot. And then finally the last one, and this is when I got to play some at it was a summer violin camp essentially. But a friend of mine brought along his computer, and they had StarCraft. And so I got to try out StarCraft for the first time. And of course, I'm looking at this thinking, man, this is super bloody and gory. And I don't care, but my parents aren't going to let me play this game. And so that was, I think, the first game that I saved up my own money to buy. And I went and I remember I bought it at Costco. It was the big, the battle chest of StarCraft and StarCraft Brood War. And that was the first computer game that I bought.
Nice.
That ended up leading into actually a lot of other strategy games. As it turned out. I don't know why I gravitated towards that. It just kind of happened.
I have a quick question, real fast.
Yeah.
You said your friend brought his computer to violin camp with him.
So okay, I say violin camp.
I don't.
No,
mean
I can describe it.
Okay.
It was at a university down in Oregon, actually, and so we lived at the university for a week.
Got it. Okay.
And so we had free time and stuff. It was more like college classes. It's just we were,
I thought you guys were
12.
in a hut, by a lake. No. I'm like, man, it gives you a whole new meaning to bring your own computer for real.
Yeah,
it was those things weren't small back in the day.
No, they weren't.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just really curious.
Yeah,
continue.
Yeah.
StarCraft, Costco. You bought it.
Yeah. So that ended up leading into some more strategy games.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Civilization 2 was something I ultimately ended up getting. Had a lot of fun with that. Still play Civilization games. Heroes of Might and Magic 3 was, I love that game. It's not balanced at all. I mean, there are definitely there are lots of different ways to cheese the game, but it was super fun. It was really it had a really cool world to it. Just the immersive sense of that one was kind of what got me into that. And also, this is something that kind of leads into high school a little bit, but I also got Empire Earth, which is kind of like Age of Empires, at least in aesthetic and to a degree play style. except it's like if Age of Empires started in the Stone Age and then went into the future. And it had like 15 different ages and a bunch of different civilizations that all had different powers. And you could actually build your own custom civilization and like combine powers from different like built-in stuff, you know, historical.
You're talking about
countries.
Civ?
I'm talking about Empire Earth.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, Civ has the different countries, but you can't customize them really.
Got it. I was gonna say, I was like, I don't remember that in Civ.
Yeah. Other than that, I remember there's a couple other games that I remember playing a lot when I was younger. Dragon Warrior Monsters actually is one of them. So I've only ever played 2 games in the Dragon Warrior universe, or
Dragon Warrior / Dragon Quest,
whatever. Dragon
here
Quest.
in the States.
Yeah. Dragon Warrior Monsters was the first one. I've never finished it, but the amount of hours that I put into that game is
that's kind of a Pokemon sort of thing.
Yeah,
isn't
it's like Pokemon. And then the other one actually was quite a few years later on the Wii, like Dragon Quest Swords, I think it was.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it took advantage of the motion controls, and you would actually swing the sword or swing the Wiimote, and it would like detect where you swung and show you on the screen, and you know, that kind of stuff.
Some Skyward Sword type stuff.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Cool.
Yeah. So then that kind of leads into high school, which I think is kind of where it starts to really come together. So we'd play Empire Earth and StarCraft. This is where I first played Warcraft 3, and then we played a few other games as well. But we would have LAN parties at our school. So there was a group of kids that were 3 or 4 years older than us, and they had started meeting up to play computer games in the digital media classroom. And that one of the classes, one of the projects they would do is build a computer, and that was something that we ended up doing pretty early, or some of my friends did. I didn't have time to take that particular class, but once those guys graduated, right, this is probably our junior year when that started, we decided we were going to try and have like a monthly LAN party at school, and we actually did it. You know, we'd get probably 20, 30 people to show up, and some of us would do computers. A lot of people would bring their Xboxes. There was a lot of Halo played at these things.
Of course.
Did you get good at lugging your equipment around?
You know, I didn't have a whole lot of my own equipment to lug around.
Okay.
I usually borrowed the several computers that were capable of running the games we wanted there. But like I remember that was before that was before Blizzard had released the StarCraft no CD patch. So when we wanted to play StarCraft together, we'd have to boot it up with the CD in a computer. Once it was started, it would keep running. They only needed the CD to start the game. So then we'd pass it to the next computer and start that one and go on down the line.
Nice
you couldn't
work,
play
Ryan.
online because you didn't have different codes, but I don't think we had access to the internet through those computers anyway. So we just played with each other. We played a lot of the custom maps. And it's actually where I got my first exposure to Dota as well. The guys that have been playing...
I'm so sorry.
Right?
I'm so sorry.
The guys that have been playing before us were playing... I remember watching them play some Dota, and it looked interesting, and we played around with it. Now, we, as a group, I guess not to get too far into it, we didn't always deal too well with direct competition. In Halo, not too big a deal, but in strategy games where like when you start losing, you get to sit there and watch yourself lose for like another 5 to 10 minutes.
The tilt.
And then Dota is even worse that way.
Yeah, it is.
So we actually never played Dota against each other.
Oh, good
What we
choice.
would do is, by the time we were playing it, there were some like Dota maps that had AI implemented. And so I'd always pick one of like a few different heroes. I remember playing the Drow Ranger. I remember playing the Dwarven Sniper. There's one or two others that I picked up, but like all in the same kind of archtype. Like, let me attack things from a long ways away.
Want to know what's funny? Is that their names in Dota 2 is Drow Ranger and Sniper.
Yeah, no, I know that.
Literally same thing.
You're like
so we'd play and we'd lose and win and whatever. It was fun.
Yeah, you're playing against a sniper. Of course you're gonna lose.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. But yeah, so we did a lot of strategy games at those LAN parties, and then the other 2/3 of the LAN party would be playing Halo the whole time. So they were having
Pretty
more
typical.
fun than we were probably.
Pretty typical.
But, yeah.
Yeah, pretty typical for LAN parties, I say back then.
Yeah. So, and then also, I guess another couple notes on my high school. That's most of what high school did for me, I guess, in terms of video gaming. However, I did pick up for the first time in the third generation of Pokemon was when I first looked into how to create like a competitive Pokemon team. Mm-hmm. I didn't make a very good one, but I made one. And making one at all meant that you had a way better shot at beating your friends who had just had the team they played through the game with.
Yeah.
And so I made this team in third generation Pokemon. I was like, hey, we should do some Pokemon battling. And I just thrashed the friend that agreed to it. And then he never played Pokemon with me again.
Oh my gosh.
Which was kind of sad, but also satisfying on a certain level, if I am completely honest. And then the other thing, and this is something I don't bring up a whole lot, I started in, what was that? The summer between sophomore and junior year of high school, started playing this game online called Cyber Nations.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, baby.
Yeah.
I've heard of it.
It's a browser game.
Oh,
so,
no.
like, I mean, a lot of people are familiar with mobile games and browser games, Facebook games. You know, they have all these, you know, cutesy little graphics.
Farmville.
They're overall pretty simplistic. This was, like, not even there.
Yes.
Right? It was basically just a spreadsheet. You made a nation, right? And it was just like you have all these stats of whatever it is that your nation has in it, and it was more or less just something where you would mess around with these numbers. You'd build your infrastructure, you'd build tech, you'd build different improvements and stuff. The game itself was not good. Like it was just playing around with numbers. But where it actually excelled, right? The thing that kept me playing for like 8 years afterwards was that there was this surprisingly complex like political subgame going on in the background.
Zach, you were.
Zach wants to say so much
I know.
about this game.
Okay, can I cut in real quick?
Yeah.
Dude, I played Cyber Nations for like
No way.
5 or 6 years.
No way.
On and off. Yeah, I had like 5 different nations. I was officers and like alliances.
Which alliances?
Iron.
Oh my God.
Iron.
There's so Brittin,
Wait,
have you
what
ever
was your
heard
what
this
was your
game?
what was your
love
account
this.
name?
Have you ever heard
Iron,
this
Iron, PPN, and then a couple others. But yeah,
I have never met someone who played Cyber Nation.
You guys have a new connection
If this
now.
Okay, so
episode-
at its peak, Cyber Nations had like 40,000 players. Like that
Okay.
was the most it had, and probably half of the. No, that's an exaggeration, but like 10% of those were probably either people playing multiple nations or like just like defunct like people who were logging in to keep them active. But that was it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it had the craziest like political stuff going on. Like everyone knows about EVE Online.
Yeah.
It was like EVE Online, like straight up at that tier of like people being assholes to each other and like not getting along, kind of deliberately, occasionally having fun, just like going to war with each other. But like, man,
This is personal, dude.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
You can
it's
tell he started
Did
getting
you guys
heated.
follow it till the end? Do you know what happened to it?
There is no end. It's
I've
still
got
going.
a friend still
Really?
playing. There's like 4,000 or 5,000 people left.
I'm
It's
gonna
super
check
small.
it out when I get home. I'm
It's
gonna start
actually
playing it.
it's not that small. I still get emails on like because I'm still connected to the forum of the alliance I was on.
Yeah.
And so they're still talking and working on stuff. I don't know why I'm getting the emails.
We're
still.
learning so much about each other, guys.
I
This is
know.
awesome.
There
If
were,
this
like-
episode accomplishes nothing
to,
else,
to give a context of like how seriously people took this, there were probably like 200 or so different alliances, and of those, maybe like at its peak, like 70 or 75 of them kind of mattered in terms of strength. And those alliances would have long and like specifically drawn out treaties with each other.
Yeah.
You know, you'd have your non-aggression pacts,
Yep.
you'd have optional defense pacts, you'd have mutual defense pacts, you'd have mutual aggression and defense pacts, optional aggression. Like it's all
Yeah.
of these things. There's probably 50 different acronyms that Zach and I could throw back and forth.
you guys have lost Scotty and I.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, sorry.
it
Oh
sounds
my
fascinating.
so
I clicked out.
I wanna throw Dan ahead because I think only me and you probably care about this.
Yeah.
And then maybe the 2 people that maybe hear this ever.
Yeah.
But
Dang, you're so confident. I love it.
I mean, I never met another person in real life that played Cyber Nation.
Yeah,
which is
I have
awesome.
one friend that we got into it. He's the one who got me into it. Yeah, I played in 2006, about 6 months after the game had started is when I started playing.
So basically, like Jessica cut in, I'll let Dan continue. But basically, it gets so in depth that you have to basically take a class to get into an alliance.
Yeah.
So basically, they
You
run
apply.
you apply. They have to approve you, and then you run like maybe a 2-day course on how to play the game, how to fight,
Don't understand.
and how to do everything, how to pay bills and collect taxes.
Right, because
and
it
run armies.
wasn't all clear, right? Like the game design from like a UI perspective and from like how it all worked wasn't all that great, but it worked well enough to enable this complicated political.
So this stuff was all
game.
outside of the game itself.
The game functioned basically as the place where the things mattered, but
Planet
the game
Bob.
itself actually, like the things that we care about, happened on the forums.
Wow.
They happened in IRC. They happened on Skype. Like,
Yep.
yeah. Oh,
Fascinating.
man. Okay,
Hey.
we're gonna have to talk about this later.
Oh yeah. All right. I'll let you go.
Yeah, okay, so Cybernations, that I won't talk about that anymore, but I played that for about 8 years, I'd say. Yeah, okay.
What's next?
I don't know how much time.
How much time we got?
It's been a while.
Let Scott go.
Yeah, well, I have college too still.
Okay.
So,
All right, never mind.
okay, college,
Disregard that.
I'll hit this up real quick. Going into college, I got the orange box,
Ooh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
right? And so that had obviously
you,
it had
Mr. Newell.
Half-Life, which I never really played much of.
Okay.
I still haven't. I should.
You
I've
should.
opened it up. I've played it a little bit.
Maybe you shouldn't though, because then you won't become part of the Illuminati.
Yeah,
Half-Life
maybe.
3 confirmed.
We'll see. And then there was
You heard it
Team
here
Fortress
first.
2, which I knew people who played. I played it some. I've never been that into first-person shooters, so it didn't grab me. But like, it's a very thematic game, so I remember it pretty clearly, and it was always fun to watch people play it. And then Portal. Portal was a great game.
Yeah.
Portal was something else.
Portal,
there was nothing quite like it when it came out.
It was the first time I think that I'd played a game that was as short as Portal is, right? Because it takes maybe 2 hours to complete your first time through,
Yeah.
2 or 3, depending on how long it takes you on the puzzles. I remember playing it one night, and I got basically to the end of the puzzles and into that kind of the last chunk of the game before you go and you see GLaDOS and all that. And I played through that first chunk at night, and I was like, okay, I should go to bed because I don't know how long this will take. I could be up until 5 in the morning still playing this, and I shouldn't do that. So I got up the next morning when I had some time to play again, and I played through, and then I was done. And I was like, oh.
Another 20 minutes? Half
Yeah,
hour, something
like
that.
20 minutes, half an hour probably.
Yeah,
And
that's when the game grabs you though and takes you by
Yeah.
surprise and becomes something different
And I
entirely
just-
than you thought it was.
I remember that was a phenomenal game. And obviously, I mean, everyone loves Portal.
I don't know anyone that doesn't love Portal.
The memes continue on today. You can still tell someone the cake is a lie, and they will understand.
I just want to say I'd way rather have Portal 3 than Half-Life 3, Scotty, at this point.
I agree with you.
Do you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. All right, go on.
There's not much we agree on.
I think
but
it'd be
we can
cool
agree
if
on
they. I think it'd be cool if they released Portal 3 and basically hid Half-Life 3 in the background of it.
Oh yeah, that's
That'd
one
be
of the
super-
predominant
like-
conspiracy
yeah.
theories. Out
They
there.
it is literally the entire game of Half-Life 3 in Portal 3.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think that'd be cool. Anyway, that was my introduction to Steam, which was not good for my wallet. I don't
No.
think.
How strong's your library at this point? Dare I ask?
3,000
Well,
strong.
okay, granted that some of these essentially are repeat entries, but I have over 500 titles in my
Yeah.
Steam library.
Yeah.
I thought I had a lot. I
Steam
had
gets
30.
you like
Well,
that.
okay, so some of it comes from at one point during college. I don't remember when it was, but there were publisher catalogs that they'd put on sale. Now these days, when you see sales on Steam, the average sale during the Christmas season is going to be 20% off, 30% off. You'll see some that hit 50% off, and there's a few games that are frequently go up to 70, 75% off, right? Like Terraria goes on sale for $2.50 multiple times a year because they're just hey, have our game. We, have fun.
Yeah.
They had publisher catalogs that for the most part, they were 90% off. You're still paying $75 because there's that many things in the publisher.
And it's
catalog.
almost everything this publisher has put on Steam.
Right. So that led to a number of different things, but most specifically, I ended up playing some Paradox games. I don't know who here is familiar with Paradox Interactive games, but
Strategy.
Grand Strategy.
Okay,
This
okay.
is kind of the next step beyond regular strategy games, or one of the steps beyond. They are immensely complicated games. There's a lot going on in the background. There's a lot to keep track of. But super fun once you get the hang of it. I actually also tried Dwarf Fortress around this time, which is similarly incredibly complicated. And it's also very, very minimalistic graphics. If retro style and overly complicated games are your thing, check out Dwarf Fortress. It's crazy.
Right on my own.
But yeah, these days, Paradox, probably the most notable title is Crusader Kings 2. I feel like that's the one people are the most familiar with.
I've seen that on sale a lot on Steam.
Yeah. So one of the cool things about Paradox games that drew me to the I guess this series of games was that hypothetically, I've never done this. I think it'd be super cool to do. I've never done it though. You could start a game in Crusader Kings or Crusader Kings 2, which starts in 700 something AD. And you play that up through about 1300 using that game's rules, that game's map, whatever. And it's a map of Europe and some other parts of the world. Then you can take that game, that save file at the very end, and you can then import it. They have like a translator program that you can translate it into a Europa Universalis save file, which starts right where you left off and then goes for another 400 years into the 1700s or 1800s or something. At which point you can then do the same thing, but put it into Victoria, which is another one of their franchises, at the end of which you get the World War II game Hearts of Iron. So you hypothetically could start a game in 768 or something like that and play it all the way to like 1960.
Have you done this, Dan?
Never done it. That would be hundreds of hours for a single save.
I smell a speed run coming on.
I've never even finished a
anti-speed run.
So Europa Universalis isn't that hard to finish. You might not get anything done, but it's a pretty stable world at that point. But Crusader Kings 2, the whole point is you're building your family's dynasty, and so if you don't look forward and like plan it all out, then your family could die out, and usually does pretty quickly until you get the hang of the game. And there's a lot to get the hang of.
Sounds like it.
So yeah, so I got into those games a little bit then. I didn't actually get into them again until a few years later. But other stuff that went on during college, that was when I got into a variety of other types of gaming as well. So Dungeons and Dragons, I did in college in earnest for the first time. I had played some Magic the Gathering before, but at college was where I met people who were super into it and like, multiple thousands of dollars in decks and things like that. They'd go to tournaments and win things because they'd spent all this money. It's crazy stuff, but still fun. Borderlands. I played a lot of Borderlands when that came out. And then towards the end of college, I ended up trying out League of Legends. So I actually tried out League of Legends while it was in beta. I don't know exactly when. All I did was load up the game. And I don't know if it was the beta or like when it had just freshly released, but it was very new. And I remember playing through their tutorial bit. And they had Ashe. You would go through their little tutorial bit with Ashe, and I'd be like, oh, this is the Drow Ranger from Dota. And I played it a little bit, and then I realized it was 100% PvP. And I was still kind of like nervous about stepping into that realm just because that had never worked for us in high school. So I didn't end up playing League again until a couple years later at the end of season 1, beginning of season 2 sometime when I was watching another friend of mine, Nathan, who I've never mentioned here before, but he's one of my current kind of gaming friends that I keep in touch with, even though he doesn't live in the area anymore. And he was playing League of Legends at the time, and so I'd sit and watch him play, and eventually figured out this is probably something that I could do, especially because I have people to play with. And so then I ended up getting into League at that point. So that was season 2.
Played that for a year or two, and now you're done with it.
Right, yeah.
No, that's not what happened.
I'm in the middle of my placements now.
He Brittined it.
Yeah.
You got introduced and obsessed.
So at the end of college, so I had kind of a rough patch in there. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to be doing with myself, and also had some mental health stuff to work through and whatever. So I ended up taking a break from college. I'm still on that break 5 years later. and just kind of tried to get my life in order, right? So during that time, I mostly stuck to some franchises that I'd been playing for a while. So the Paradox games were in there. I would dabble with those a bit. Still playing Civilization. League of Legends was definitely a big one there. A lot of my friends at the time played League of Legends, so it was very easy to play. And I actually did some organized team play with some of those friends, and I'm in touch with most of them still. And we would meet up multiple times a week, and we'd all crowd into my room in the house that I was living in at the time, and we'd play League for 4 or 5 hours a night sometimes.
Yeah, and you should be a pro.
Right? Yeah,
that's what we all. That's what we all tell ourselves that play MOBAs. We're like, we should be pro, and then we realize we suck.
And then it was that time that I started getting back into Pokemon. I'd skipped on a generation because I never got a Nintendo DS, so I never played 4th gen Pokemon. But then 5th gen was coming out, and the 3DS was there, and I realized, I have a job. I can afford this 3DS. I can afford this Pokemon game. Sure, let's do it. So I got that, and I got back into Pokemon. And it was in that next couple years, too, that I got back into building like a competitive team and, doing IVs and EVs and balancing things out and stuff. And that time it was much more successful because, once again, and this has been the key this whole way through, is having people to play the games with you, or with me, I guess, has always been super important. So having people to play Pokemon with made that work out.
So a lot of people don't know this about you, but you like music, right?
I do like music.
So what would be your bigger passion, video games or music?
That's a big question to just drop.
I know, dang. We're already an hour, man.
That's a show.
Hey, this is.
I don't have a good answer to that.
This is special, okay?
Okay, so I mean, obviously, I'm on a podcast about video games.
Hey, you have to.
So you better say video games.
So obviously, I'm pretty into video games, and I feel like, especially in the last several years, I've started to approach it more from not just like it's a fun video game, let's go play it, but like as it's a way to interact with friends. It's a way to be social and stuff. And also as something that it'd be cool to do something surrounding video games for a job someday. I'm not there right now, but there's no reason I couldn't be, right? Like we live in Washington. It wouldn't be hard to gear yourself up to start doing interviews at,
Valve is here, Microsoft is here,
right.
Bungie,
Nintendo.
But then, I mean, you also have like Wizards of the Coast and some of these other companies like that.
And we've got PAX in Seattle, which is a hub of, developers from all over the place getting together.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the next best place after California to be living if you want to do video game stuff. So that would be super cool. On the other hand, I mean, I started playing the violin when I was 5.
Yep.
And I've been playing it consistently since then. I mean, we can't record on Tuesdays because I have rehearsal, right?
Dan's going to provide our musical intro one of these days.
But you know what?
Someday I'll put that together.
You know what you should say to that violin? You're here now. You're not with them.
What do you say?
I don't know what you're saying.
Stop talking.
So that gets most of the way to the present day, and with the podcast, I guess there's a few things that I've done since then. Because I feel I've stabilized everything. I have a job and a place to live, and I'm not like freaking out about it, which I probably didn't need to be back then either. But hindsight,
you're young.
Whatever. And also, mental health is totally a thing. That's way better in order to. But I've tried out a few other things since then. Notably, I'd never played any MMOs before. That was something that I was like adamantly against for whatever reason. Well, I had a friend in high school that would play World of Warcraft, right? It came out, he would play it, and he would skip school to go play World of Warcraft.
Much better than EverQuest. But
right.
And I was can I say really quick? I can't believe I did not talk about EverQuest at all. That's a whole nother show. I just didn't bring it up because we're going to do a whole show on that someday. Sorry, go ahead.
So he would skip to go play World of Warcraft, or I think that's what he did anyway. He wouldn't be at school anyway. And I was always telling myself, I was like, man, he's wasting his life, man. He's not going to school. He's not doing any of this stuff. And I mean, joke's on me. He's a streamer with a pretty decent following now, and he's working for DreamHack.
Nice.
Like I think he's in Sweden right now, or he just went to Sweden to go like be like doing DreamHack stuff, which is super cool.
Hey, he doesn't go by PewDiePie, does he? By any chance?
He doesn't go by.
Can you imagine PewDiePie on VGRx?
Could you
Someday.
Could you
We'll keep
imagine
working
being
toward that.
friends with PewDiePie?
Why do we keep
Right.
plugging PewDiePie? Just out of curiosity. I guess I
Well,
did.
you
I'm
say
sorry.
PewDiePie,
You
and you
started it.
instantly
Yeah.
get thousands
Anyway.
of views.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Anyway,
Tag
so I
him.
finally tried some MMOs and realized that the other thing I was worried about is that I would become that guy, right? Which at the time meant basically abandoning everything else that I
loser.
was doing.
It's
to
a real
play.
fear. I mean, don't sell
Right.
that short.
Yeah, no, that's it, 'cause
MMOs can
it's-
consume you.
and it's something I've seen happen, and I found out that it wouldn't have for me because MMOs, it's too much work. Like
It's a full time job, basically.
I played
Almost,
Guild Wars
yeah.
2 for a while, and I have a couple maxed out characters in Guild Wars 2, and that was fun. It was an entertaining enough story to play through. The mechanics are fun to play around with. The overall, like the end game is great, but it didn't destroy me. Obviously,
You're still here. Hooray.
It worked out. I played, and then I tried out several Korean MMOs. Notably, Blade and Soul is the one that I put the most time into, which was fun. Yeah, and then also I did dabble in EVE Online at one point and found out that I don't want to play Spreadsheet Simulator 2016 or whatever it is.
20XX.
20XX.
fair
Good game. It's probably one of the best games that I will never play. So
Good.
yeah, and that mostly gets us to the present day.
Cool. Which you're still doing what you did. Play Pokemon
Still doing
and
what I do.
playing League.
Pokemon,
Lol.
D&D, and board games.
A lot of, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Shout out to Mark who
Yeah.
got me into board games.
You guys got me playing board games now. Like,
Yeah.
I'm having a ton of fun with it. It's crazy.
Credit goes to Mark on that one.
Yeah.
He's a determined individual.
It's crazy. I didn't know how many he had.
Scott, tell us
Yeah.
about yourself.
Hi, I'm Scott.
Yeah, now that we've taken up all the time.
Okay, so here is first of all, I have a very sparse memory. I have really bad memory. Like, I can never remember things.
Yeah,
I had to write stuff down. to do
I
this,
blame
to
that
get
partly
the
on my
basis.
dad.
I was writing stuff down this whole time, and I remembered like 4 of those things while we were sitting.
No,
there.
you're fine.
I mean-
But I mean, like, I can't remember like super detailed things. Is what I meant. I kind of have an idea. But okay, let's see. I was born in '94. I'm 23 now. My earliest memory into video games was going over to my grandma's house and
Hey, a theme.
and playing Tetris on a Game Boy.
Was Grandma good at Tetris?
She was good at
I
Tetris.
figured.
Yeah. My mom played Tetris as well. But like this was like the fat Game Boy. Like,
Oh yeah.
The very first.
yeah. It was a lot of fun. And then also Pac-Man on that. And I don't remember exactly how it kind of evolved, honestly, from that point. I just always remember the first console I ever had at home was an N64. And I honestly don't remember how we got it. I don't remember how it ended up in my house. I
Oh.
just remember playing it all
I
the
just
time.
realized I forgot to mention how we got our N64.
Dude, I barely remember how. I don't know.
I remember clearly. My
Yeah.
older sister entered into a raffle at school. It was one of those like they gave you the magazines
Yeah.
and sold things.
Yeah.
She got like 2 entries, right? And there were kids that had sold dozens of entries worth of stuff.
Yeah.
And they drew her entry, or like one of her 2 entries to get a Nintendo 64.
Nice.
Like my parents, I think, fully planned to never have video games in the house.
Uh-oh.
But they couldn't just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Like I think they felt bad doing that.
That
or
would
something.
have.
The Trojan horse.
And then my older sister, she played it. She
Yeah.
didn't play a whole lot of
But
it.
you played it more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ocarina of Time, Super
course.
Mario 64, Super Smash Brothers. I mean, all the classics.
Yeah.
I didn't mention those earlier, but those were all big
Of
for
course.
me too.
I
so.
mean, yeah.
Same ones for you, Scotty. What were you playing on the
Basically,
64?
yeah. I remember playing Super Mario 64 all the time. Smash was obviously a number 1 for me. But I specifically remember playing 2 games in particular. Banjo-Kazooie,
yeah.
one of Rare's greatest games of all time. Definitely in my top 5 of favorite games of all time. And Paper Mario.
Classic.
I absolutely love Paper Mario to death. I wish they'd go back to
What
the
happened to
turn-based.
Paper Mario?
I
It's
don't know.
not the same franchise
quick,
anymore.
just real side story. I'll never forget this. I remember playing Paper Mario. I was in the desert map. It was the second main place you go to. And this has nothing to do with video games. It's just a funny story. We got a refrigerator that day. and brand new refrigerator, okay? And the entire house started shaking, and I'm downstairs playing Paper Mario, and I thought my parents like dropped the fridge upstairs, so that's why the entire house was shaking. And then it just continued to shake, and I was like, "Oh, this isn't." They did. I started walking upstairs. I was like, "Why is the house still shaking?" And I was like, "It's an earthquake. It's an earthquake."
Was it the earthquake?
It was
2001.
Yeah, it was an earthquake.
That's so funny.
But yeah, it was just something funny that happened. After the N64 and playing the ever-loving crap out of that system, I remember getting a Game Boy Color, and me and my sister would always get Pokemon just came in our lives. I honestly couldn't tell you how it happened. It just did. And we would always get the opposite copy from each other. So my sister got red, I got blue. I had Pokemon Red. Yeah, blue. She got silver, I got gold, I got sapphire, she got ruby. So on and so forth.
I think all of the same games that your sister did. Actually,
did you?
Yeah.
Oh man, horrible choice. But I remember just playing those like a madman. I remember doing the same thing that you did, Dan. Being in my room super late at night. I had the little plug-in light for my Game Boy, so I would have that like underneath my my blankets.
There were so many attachments you could throw on that thing. It became great. Like a little space station, basically.
Exactly.
And what you all don't see here is Scott's dad, who is helping us record today, rolling his eyes at this.
So I could. They had the room like just down the hall from me, so I didn't have as much time to react as you did. But I've had to do the same thing where I had to I turn down the volume and put it under my pillow, act like I was sleeping.
You're gonna get a stern talking to later for this one.
Dang, it only took 15 plus years. Am I right? And then I just continued playing games on my Game Boy. The next console we got was, and I'm sorry, Brittin, we never had an NES. We never had a Super Nintendo.
Quite all right.
No.
Not even late to the party, huh? You just didn't have them at all.
Just never had them.
Okay.
The earliest console I ever remember playing was the Sega, though. I remember playing Sonic and stuff over at my neighbor's house.
Okay.
But that was it. It was N64 and on from that. So then I got a GameCube, best system of all time, hands down. Some of the best games I have ever played in my
just
entire
a couple
life.
weeks ago, you took all your GameCube games
Yes,
off the shelf
and you saw how many I had. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. I absolutely love that console, and it's funny because it was one of their worst selling consoles of all time. But the GameCube had the best games on it, like Super Smash Brothers Melee. I just remember playing that a ton at tournaments, and they're not like tournaments, but like with my friends and having tournaments. And then after kind of doing the whole GameCube thing, the PlayStation 2 came out, I believe, shortly after the GameCube, if I remember correctly. And my sister got it for her birthday. And the one game I remember she got was Kingdom Hearts with it. And that kind of stirred my love for Kingdom Hearts. I absolutely love that game. Brooks probably loves it more than I do.
Pascal Brooks.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, probably. He's really intense. I thought I was a really big fan of it. But I remember playing the absolute crap out of that game.
Did you already love Disney before you had started playing that game?
Oh yeah.
Because that definitely
it factors in for sure.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, you already recognize so much of this stuff, and now you're literally living in the world that they did.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll never forget going against Riku the second time on like one of the last levels, and I could not for the life of me beat him no matter what I did. So I actually had a friend come over from church and beat it for me because I couldn't do it at all.
Hey, we've all had to resort to that.
I know. And now,
point in our lives.
Actually,
now
that is something I have always adamantly been against. You could ask my younger sister. She would ask me to do things for her on Zelda Ocarina of Time, and be like, nope, not going to do it.
Won't do
you got to do it yourself.
Ouch.
R.I.P.
I was insufferable.
Oh, well, that's fine. I normally would do the same thing, but I just couldn't beat it. I was like, I'll never beat this game otherwise. And now the game's like jump change to me. Like I can play that game on proud mode, like with one level and blindfolded and beat the game.
She was trying to teach you something because
what was it?
If you beat a part for a person in a game, the game's just going to get harder from there. If you couldn't handle that part, you have no business.
The rest of the game was
cakewalk.
Of the game was cakewalk.
In this case, I guess that's not true.
No. The rest of the game was easy peasy.
All right.
And then I'm trying to like really dig here, but
You're a lot more Nintendo centric than I am.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah,
like, on the overall picture.
When I started, it was all Nintendo for me, and it still gradually went through like basically how my sister and I would do it. We would always split a console, so we would always go 50-50 on it, and it just ended up that I would just play them the most. Like if you go in my room, every single console that we've ever split is in my room. And after the PlayStation, I got a 360. I didn't have the Red Ring of Death. Oh yeah, the Xbox 360. Oh yeah, original Xbox. I got the original Xbox before the 360. I played Halo so much on that console.
Wasn't there a Banjo-Kazooie on that too, or no? No, it was N64, and then there was one on 360. Never mind.
Get out of the room.
Sorry, you love Banjo-Kazooie?
No, I don't want to talk about that game. That's not a Banjo-Kazooie game.
Whoops. Okay.
Yeah. Excuse
Faux
you.
pas. I'm sorry.
No, they re-released it on the 360. But yeah, I remember getting the Xbox. I remember having my friends over and playing Halo a ton. I was never in. We never really had a PC, quote unquote, to really play video games. The only games I really remember playing on the PC was RuneScape. So RuneScape was a big part of my life. I'm gonna say this, and my mom's gonna hate me for it. I was homeschooled for till about 8th grade, and that when I went to an actual school. But I was homeschooled, and I played RuneScape, and then I got my sister into playing RuneScape. The funny thing is I got both my parents into RuneScape as well, and we literally would. Oh no, I'm saying it. I'm saying it. We literally would be like, you know what? Let's take a break from school today and go play RuneScape. This is my mom saying this to us.
That's the luxury of homeschool.
And we would play RuneScape all day long. And then my dad would come home from work. He's like, "What are you guys doing?" And my mom would be like, "Oh, we skipped school today to play RuneScape." And
putting your mom on blast.
Yeah, I'm putting my mom on blast. I mean, if it wasn't for my mom, I probably wouldn't be as much as a gamer as I am. So honestly, but both of my parents have been very like, they didn't care if I played video games. They were very supportive of it, and they got us video games, and it was never like a black and white situation with that. It was just like, oh, okay, we'll work on it or something like that. But it was never like, oh no, you can't have that, they're of the devil or something like that. Like some parents are like that, where they won't get their kids consoles because it's mind rotting, clearly. But besides RuneScape, when it came to PC games, I remember going over to my friend's house a lot, who had a ton of different PC games, a lot of like Star Wars games, and he had Lego games as well. So like Lego Racer, and there was this one. It was like a mining game. And you could build different things and drill through walls and stuff like that, and you had to collect materials. I should play that game again. It's been a while.
I mean, it sounds like Minecraft, but I don't think that's what you're talking about.
It is literally, it's almost just like Minecraft, but with Lego. And then, let's see. I mentioned Xbox. I didn't really do a ton on Xbox besides play Halo like everyone else did.
I mean, that was the thing on Xbox.
That was
there
Xbox,
were other things too, but
it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
It was all Xbox.
I don't remember much about the Xbox, but I remember going to a friend's house and
playing Halo
on the Xbox. Yeah,
I remember going over to one of my neighbors' houses and playing Grand Theft Auto. My parents didn't let me play that game. That was one game that they
I did the same thing.
It was very, very no.
I sound like the bad kid.
You are
out of the group.
You are.
We already knew that.
You played Twisted Metal when you were 4, so we don't want to hear it. I went over to my friend's house and I snuck playing Grand Theft Auto. So that was really fun. Went to 360. I had a lot of parties over at my house playing Halo 2 on multiplayer. And sometimes we wouldn't even play. We would just do a bunch of stupid stuff. We would just, like, I don't even know how to say it, but we would just do a bunch of dumb stuff.
Yeah, we did the same thing at our LAN parties.
Yeah.
We ended up making a custom map mode on, I don't remember the name of the, Zanzibar maybe. It's the one with the beach and it has the water.
Yeah.
So they blocked off everything outside of the water.
Yeah.
And then they put like 6 pillars, something like that. They put a bunch of pillars where players would start on, and then there'd be one guy. I think this is Halo 3 for the record.
Where you could build like stuff.
Yeah. There'd be one guy
system.
who was invisible and super fast and had a sword.
Yeah.
So you could see their tracks in the water.
So it was like a zombie mode almost.
Yeah, except we called it Jaws.
Okay, nice.
Because they were like a shark, because they were faster and they had the sword and all of that. So then the people on the pillars would would have, I think, grenades and a pistol and a shotgun, and then it would be who survives the longest.
Yep.
Basically. Did you guys ever race warthogs?
Absolutely. That's not even a question, dude. Of course we did.
The absolute best.
I remember playing zombie maps on Halo 3 where I would literally get in groups of like 50 people, and it would be like this maze that you'd have to like work your way through and like get down obstacles before the zombie, like who's super slow and had a sword, would get to you.
Yeah.
But oh my god, those were some fun times playing Halo 3 like Forge system. I wish Halo could go back to what it was.
Another one we had was, it was on, I don't remember if it was 1 or 2. I think it was 1 because that was when vehicles were indestructible.
Yeah.
So we'd have, I think it was like 4 people, and 3 of them would be in warthogs or 2. And it was on the ice level that had the frozen lake.
Yeah.
And you'd have the people who were not in warthogs would stand on the lake because you couldn't turn when you were on the ice. You would just slide all the way across.
Yep.
And so then it was a game of like, can you essentially
game of chicken almost.
It's chicken, but then like, can you knock them out of the warthog and steal it for yourself?
Like,
there was no like win condition. We would just do it.
It
was fun.
Do it for hours. There's no ending.
I remember we actually some friends and I set up a tent in his backyard and ran out an extension cable and set up a TV and the Xbox, and we played that in his backyard for a couple hours.
Just because you could.
Awesome.
Super fun.
Awesome. After Xbox, I went back to Microsoft systems and Sony systems. I was very fortunate to where I was able to have both. So I kind of was able to play the franchises that the other didn't have, or like this game came out on this console, and so I'll play it on this console. But Nintendo, what?
Back then, there was the console wars.
Yeah, that didn't matter to me. I didn't care. I just wanted it.
Yeah.
It didn't matter to me either, but that's because I didn't have either of them.
It still doesn't matter to me. But I remember the Wii specifically. I'll never forget getting that console and be like, this is the best console ever.
Let me ask you something. Did you just have yourself really psyched up for it? When you brought it home, played it for the first time, do you remember how you actually felt about it?
No, I don't.
You don't?
No. Because
I got it on launch day. And I brought it home. It was a midnight thing, midnight launch event. I brought it home and I hooked it up. And I had very mixed emotions when I first played with it, because all the promotional videos and stuff made it seem like this really good one-to-one, very precise either pointing or motion control stuff. It was not that.
You get yourself hyped up about these things a lot, too.
I guess, but this felt like almost disingenuous advertising to me. Like the motion controls were never even close to one-to-one.
Yeah.
The direct pointing stuff always felt a little floaty and off to me. And the first couple of games that came out were those two things. You had Red Steel, which was a shooter, so the motion or the pointing stuff was very important, and then you had Wii Sports, which was all motion.
That was the only game you needed.
And you could have played those games with buttons almost.
It was Brittin. This is what I imagine you when you get hyped up about things. Like, and I've seen it. You got really hyped up about the Switch. Like I just see you in line for something, like sweating bullets.
We'll have to go to a launch event sometime together.
We have. It's for Amiibos. Remember?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that little dead thing.
Definitely get excited about Amiibos.
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, it could definitely be the expectations, because I remember playing the Wii pretty early on, and I had the Conduit, which was like a actual like point shooter,
right?
Which actually worked out pretty well.
I heard that was a pretty solid shooter.
It was fun. And then Dragon Quest Swords that I mentioned earlier, it wasn't that great, but like it did a pretty good job of figuring out like where did I actually swing, turning whatever I did into either a straight or like an explicitly curved slash. But
yeah, and I guess now that I think about it, the bowling was pretty good and pretty intuitive.
It was okay, I guess.
Anyway, Scott, we're interrupting you.
No, you're fine. I played No More Heroes a lot. That was a really fun game on Wii. But the big one for me was Super Smash Brothers Brawl.
Okay.
It's a game that we've all wanted for a really, really long time. Having the promise of a story mode in a fighting game, absurd. Me and my friend Jared at the time, he's still my friend. What can I say? My friend Jared and I would always go over to each other's houses and play Smash Brothers Melee. And I remember we got so hyped when Super Smash Brothers Brawl came out. We actually went to GameStop, and they had a tournament there. And so we all signed up for the tournament. And me and my friend were playing Melee for so long. We're like, what character will be our best character? You know, we were playing on like the GameCube and stuff. We were like, what are the best character? You know, how are we gonna do things? Well, we were super confident. We were like, oh, we got this. It's fine. We show up, and there were so many people there. You would think it was like the line to get into a sold out show. There were so many people there, and I remember being there with him and signing up for the tournament. And they set up like different TVs outside of the GameStop, and I'll never forget remembering the manager of the GameStop. His name's Jeremy. Awesome guy, by the way. I remember him coming out of the store holding up this copy of Brawl, and we all went crazy. Like, yeah, whoa! Cheering, like screaming, going nuts over Super Smash Brothers Brawl. And I remember he put it into the console, and then I was asking for an update.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So we're like, no. He's like, hang on. So after the update got done, we watched the opening cutscene, and we were losing our minds. We were like, it was awesome.
Magical.
Yeah, it was a magical moment.
Did you win the tournament?
Life. Oh, no, I lost first round.
Yeah.
So did my friends.
Well,
we were awful.
It's Brawl.
The guy
coming
who,
off Melee.
The guy who won actually bought it from Japan and played it for a good couple months.
Well, that's not fair.
Yeah, I know. We also were using the Wiimote and Nunchuck, and that was awful.
Not ideal.
Yeah, no. Terrible controller.
Can I make a confession?
Do you play with it?
That is my preferred control scheme on Super Smash Bros. Brawl.
I hate you so much.
I never played much of the GameCube. I didn't have a GameCube. So.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Do you want me to buy you one? I'll buy you one. I'll buy you all the games for it too.
No, it's fine.
I'm going to do it anyway.
What an offer.
Okay. So the Wii came out. I did the 360, did the PlayStation 3. Let it be known, I may have had a PlayStation, but I never played it really, besides Kingdom Hearts.
No Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9?
I played a couple Final Fantasy games, but honestly, most of the games on the Sony or like PlayStation did not interest me at all. Nothing about them seemed fun to me. Like I got really bored of the stupid overdone graphics that they rant and rave about all the time, because I feel like you don't need a game with perfect graphics to be a good game. Like
that's Nintendo's mantra right there.
That is, yeah, exactly.
Explains why it resonates with you.
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't need to have 4K visuals to have a good game, because if your game's garbage, then why would I pay $60 for it?
That's not to say Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9 are garbage.
No, I'm
but
not.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, you know what I'm coming from. And so I never really did Sony, so I was mostly on Xbox for a long time. Current generation, got the Xbox One and stuff like that. And that's pretty much done for consoles. Going back to computer games a little bit, we eventually did get laptops and better computers for gaming. And I'll never forget getting this kind of little fold out case full of computer games I got from my friend for free. He just gave it to me, and it had Age of Empires, it had a bunch of Star Wars games, and it had a bunch of games that I've never played before. I never thought about playing, I never heard about before, and I remember just installing every single one of them, playing the absolute crap out of every single one of those games. And then I met Steam, and Steam it took me a long time to start playing Steam games, because like I said, I was never really a PC gamer. I just always played on Microsoft and Nintendo games. But
you also hate digital game ownership.
Yeah, I do.
So just doesn't jive with you.
I have 100 and something games on Steam.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't want to talk about
Respectable.
it. Yeah, there's compared to Dan's 500.
You'll get there someday.
Thank you.
You don't want to get there, because most of them you never touch. If you're anything like me.
I mean,
right.
I forgot to mention the other half of that 500 is probably Humble Bundle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You get a lot of
Same for
free
me.
from that.
Expensive way to get games.
Another big thing for me is I remember starting to play League of Legends with some of my friends from high school. I didn't really I was kind of busy in high school to really do a ton of gaming. Like I still did gaming, but none of it was really memorable per se.
Good for you. You were focusing on school. Is that what's going on?
No, that's not what's going on.
Absolute silence.
There's really nothing memorable about it.
All right.
But I do remember playing League of Legends with one of my friends, and I was really into it. I played ranked. I would watch tournaments. The first time I ever went to PAX was for League of Legends, and I had no idea what PAX even was. I just bought it for League of Legends. So
Penny Arcade Expo in Seattle.
Yeah. And then
that was the same for me. I mean, I knew what PAX was, but I partially went because there was League of Legends.
Yeah, I had no idea what it was until League. And then I went for about 2 years for League of Legends, and then they stopped doing like the North American tournament there. But I still went to PAX and stuff. But League of Legends was a big part of like what gaming I did for a long, long time. And then the friends I played that with, what's the word? Abandoned me. And but also at the time, I was with someone who didn't like me to play video games that much, so I kind of gave up on playing League of Legends for her. Stupid idea. Don't ever do it. But then they just kind of moved on and, did their thing, and I didn't play League anymore. But about the beginning of, was it 2016, I believe, my friend who I knew for a really long time that I actually lost touch with, his name's Gerard.
He was someone that I met apart from Scott, which is cool.
Yeah, so it was someone we knew prior to even meeting each other. But he played Dota, and I was that typical League player. Oh, Dota's garbage. Never played it before, but I was like, Dota sucks. I'll never play Dota. What a garbage game. And now that's what I mainly play. I started playing Dota with him and a bunch of his friends, and
I remember going to in college. This would have been summer of 2013. I went to Australia with the jazz band, and Gerard was on that trip. Mm-hmm. Now, I'd kind of met Gerard before, but we ended up talking about League of Legends and Dota, and like the similarities,
I bet that
and
was
the differences.
A heated argument.
It wasn't actually, because Gerard's like a super chill guy, and like I didn't have anything against Dota myself, so it was a really kind of a fun thing to like talk about all these concepts that work fundamentally differently in the two games, despite how similar they appear. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I just started playing it, and I've been to 2 of the internationals that they have here in Seattle, and that's been a lot of fun. So that's kind of been something that has been a pretty big part of what I do, like video game wise, for a while now. I'm no expert at Dota. I never will be. I'm always looking to get better, but I feel like I know a decent amount of Dota. I'm trying to think of anything like super memorable, but I mean, besides the games that I've played, like I haven't really done anything super crazy besides what I've already said. So yeah,
you started a podcast.
There's that. I did start a podcast besides this one.
There's that too. I thought you meant us, man.
I mean, you guys are okay. But yeah, I guess that's it for my story. I guess before we end this, it kind of just worked out that we all liked video games, and we just all happen to work at the same place.
Yeah, so I guess, I can start that discussion a little bit. I remember...
I wish we could, but we're way over time right now. Okay. Yeah, we're an hour 30 in.
Well, the 15-second version is the 4 of us all work at the same place.
Yeah.
The 4 of us gradually got to know each other through work and realized we all like video games.
Yeah.
And I don't remember who initially floated the idea.
It's probably Zach.
It was Zach, yeah.
Zach. So Zach said,
and
hey,
he's the worst at it too.
Guys, let's do a video game podcast. And
it took us 6 months to start it, but we finally did it.
We did, yeah.
Yay!
I want to say you wrangled us through Brittin.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of
tag team.
I mean, real quick, it was just kind of like, I have a good friendship with Brittin. Then gradually got to know you guys.
Yeah.
Well, I got to know Brittin through Amiibos.
Yep.
So
story for another time, but
that is a story for another time.
That's literally how we met.
Here we are.
Yep. Now the 4 of us.
I just want to say we've recorded a lot of shows together, or a few shows together already. We have a ton of conversations, and I learned a lot about you guys today.
I did too.
Yeah. So this was a cool exercise.
This was awesome. I'm sorry this episode was an extra 30-minute long.
Worth it.
It was a lot of fun.
I hope you guys enjoyed
special edition episode.
Yeah, it was a special. We don't do it all the time, so this was just for you guys to kind of know a little bit more about us. I'm sorry me and Zach are boring. You guys had really good stories.
No
and
way.
stuff,
No
but-
way. I loved every moment of it.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Maybe in 6 years when we're still doing this and we're old. Well, when you're old and crusty, Brittin.
Yep.
We'll relive this moment.
Reminisce once
Yes,
again.
Exactly.
Yes, we will.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. As always, every single week. I'm Scott. We got Zach,
Hey, thank you
Dan,
guys.
What's up?
and Brittin.
See you guys later.
Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you next week on VGRx.
Bye.
The pharmacy is now closed.